This is your Estuary Report. I'm Jerry Kay. The San Francisco Estuary Partnership and the Marin Audubon Society are working to enhance the habitat value of an important area of seasonal and tidal marsh in Marin County, the Bahia Marsh. Over a 3-year period, 40,000 native plants will be planted on the site, which will contribute to a more ecologically complete and resilient wetland habitat, attractive to the federally listed endangered California clapper rail and salt marsh harvest mouse, as well as other fauna.
Bahia was the name given to this land by the developers who were going to develop this in the 60s. They wanted it to be a lagoon community, so they wanted it to have a nice maritime sounding name, so they named it Bahia, which means the bay. We would be standing in somebody's house right now, actually. The street would have been out where the marsh is, and front yard would have been right about there at the lower ecotone, so we're standing probably in someone's living room, and there would have been several houses going down both sides.
All of the lands out there were diked. There might have been some agriculture at one time, but it looks like the main purpose was to develop. We went through a number of years opposing various developments. There were at least 3. After the last one, we made an offer to the property owner, and he refused. And so a group of local citizens got a referendum together, and it was like 65% of the people in Nevada voted that they didn't want this development here. So after that, he called us up and offered to sell it to us.
And Marin Audubon was able to purchase about 630 acres. Some of those acres were given to the Marin County Open Space District and some to the California Department of Fish and Game, and Audubon continues to own part of the project site. Just to get this project off the ground took many years and many people, but Barbara Salzman was one of the key individuals.
There were many people involved, and I certainly couldn't have done it on my own, but I guess a lot of projects need to have a little impetus. Maybe I provided that sometimes.
Once the project got underway, the focus was on restoring tidal wetlands.
So here we have a tidal marsh that's connected to the Petaluma River, that's connected to the bay, and these sloughs were constructed up to this point to bring tidal water, salt or brackish water, up into this area.
And right after the tidal marsh, there's a gradually sloping area which is called the tidal marsh transition zone.
That's sort of where you have this transition between the tidal marsh and the upland. But it's super important habitat for animals that live in the marsh. When the tide gets super high, they need to come up and take refuge, like the California clapper rail, the black rails. They need to come up and take refuge in the upland ecotone area. So it's very important that we get some plants planted in here that are fairly high, fairly dense, and will provide good cover for those animals.
Looking at the site, we noticed little flags throughout the restoration area.
Each flag is one little area that we've planted 3 rhizomes of the creeping wild rye, the Lamus triticioides.
And Judy tells me a rhizome is something like a root.
But roots go straight down and rhizomes spread out horizontally just under the soil. So the plants that have rhizomes, the rhizomes can travel out and then shoot up lots of new plants from that. So it's an ideal native plant for us to plant here, and we found a great source on the site. We've propagated them, and now we're planting them out on the site. They do well next to tidal wetlands. A lot of plants can't tolerate being right next to a saltier environment. And they're also great competitors for a lot of this non-native stuff that we have growing here. So there's just a lot of reasons why that will be a great plant for us. It's also going to be fairly tall, fairly dense, and again, it'll make great upland refuge. Each planting season, which is about November through March when it's raining, we get lots and lots of people, lots of community volunteers come out and plant.
And after many years, thousands of hours of time spent by volunteers, tens of thousands of plants being added to the site, there is a key take-home message about the Bahia Wetland Restoration Project.
The tidal marsh is magical, just restores itself, because the tidal waters bring in all the seeds.
But in addition to being magical, Wetlands are one of the most diverse and important habitats around San Francisco Bay.
So I would say look a little closer to anyone who isn't familiar with wetlands and just drives by them. I would say stop and go watch what's happening in a wetland for a few minutes, and you'll definitely gain an appreciation.
And our thanks to Barbara Solzman and Judy Stocker. You can find more information about the Bahia Restoration Project on our website, sfestuary.org. And to download audio tours about wetlands in the San Francisco Bay Area, go to yourwetlands.org.